Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Fox, and welcome to this edition of Inside the Investigation. Today's case deals with the death of Torrey Anderson, Isle of Wight County, February 12th, 2013. Here's some background of how he died.
The severely burned body of 21-year-old Torrey Anderson of Raleigh, North Carolina, was found next to a charred vehicle in a field off Nike Park Road. A medical examiner determined he had a gunshot wound. Surprising, says James Stewart, who lives in the area.
If you're gonna shoot somebody, then burn the car and the body. Yeah, it's definitely trying to hide something. Yeah, well, that's just strange. Never seen that around here before. Yeah.
Authorities were alerted to the gruesome scene by a phone call just before 4 a.m.
By the time the first responders got here, the flames were almost out on their own. So the fire started somewhat earlier than 3:45 this morning. Next to the car, we found a deceased male.
State police arson investigators, along with the FBI, assisted crime scene investigators as they looked for clues in this homicide case.
That's just something that normally doesn't happen. Yeah, that's kind of surprising. Yeah, normally don't see much crime out here.
The vehicle was taken to the sheriff's office impound lot for further examination and processing for evidence.
Torrey Anderson's death remains a cold case murder. Here to talk about it is Captain Tommy Potter, the man from Isle of Wight County.
Thank you, Andy. It's good to be here this morning.
You listened to the report.
I did.
Fill me in. What happened to Torrey Anderson?
So, that's a question that we are still trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, exactly what happened to Torrey Anderson. But what we do know is that on February the 12th, at about 3:50 in the morning, we had a person going to work that morning and saw a car on fire in the area of Nike Park Road and Reynolds Drive in the Carrollton section of Isle of Wight County. He called 911, and when first responders got there, they extinguished the car fire and found a body of a male laying about 6 to 8 feet adjacent to the passenger side rear section of that car. That led our investigative team to respond there to find out, to begin our investigation to see exactly what happened. And during the course of that investigation, we were able to identify that body as being 21-year-old Torrey Anderson from Murfreesboro, North Carolina. And we also learned that Torrey died as a result of several gunshot wounds that were secondary to the fire of the car that was set that morning.
Okay, now take me into the first 3 hours inside the investigation. What are your detectives doing?
So the first 3 hours are organized chaos, so to speak, right? We're trying to figure out exactly why Isle of Wight County. We're trying to figure out, we have a badly burned body here. Our number one priority is to identify who this person is, because we're going to start the investigation with our victim, and the victim becomes the center of the spoke of the wheel, so to speak. And so the victim is the very center, and then we start working out from the victim, trying to figure out, do they have ties to our county? Do they live, work, have family there? Do they have acquaintances there? Why Isle of Wight County? Why this crime? And why on February 12th?
You have a dead body, several shots. You have a car burned up.
Badly burned.
Badly burned. Did you find anything else at the scene of evidence that could piece together the puzzle?
So unfortunately with this case, because of the condition of the car and the condition of the body, investigators normally would look for trace evidence at the scene. They would normally look for clues there. But unfortunately with this case, we just didn't have a lot to go on because everything was consumed in the fire. Or clothing and that articles on Torrey's body just really weren't in the condition that we could collect that for evidence.
So now you're going through and you're trying to figure out who Torrey Anderson is. Who is Torrey Anderson? What did you find out that goes to the essence of why he may have been killed?
Yeah. So what we found out about Torrey was, Torrey recently, in the past year before this date, had moved to Murfreesboro, North Carolina. Torrey was originally from the Wake County, Raleigh area. Torrey had a checkered past for a 21-year-old. There's no getting around that. We've discussed that with his family, and they understand that, right?
What were some of those things?
So Torrey was involved with some gang activity. Torrey was a known Crip member in Wake County. Torrey had gotten in some trouble and picked up a gun charge there in Wake County and had spent some time incarcerated. But one of the things about Torrey that appeared on the surface as we got looking into this, and I do think it really was in talking to Torrey's family, really within Torrey's heart to make a change, right? So when he was released from the county jail in Wake County, he moved to Murfreesboro, North Carolina, to get away from the life there in Wake County, to kind of separate himself from the associates that he was involved with there. And he moved in with his grandparents, who I have to say, since 2013, I've gotten to know their entire family very intimately. And I would say that his grandparents are some of the nicest, down-to-earth, most upstanding people you would ever meet. And so they took Torrey into their house with some conditions, and rightfully so. They said, Torrey, if you're going to stay here with us, you're going to get a job. And we want you to go back and further your education. And so Torrey was doing those things. He had been at Smithfield working for a contractor at Smithfield Foods for probably 12 to 13 months.
And he had moved to the area.
He had moved to Murfreesboro, and he was commuting
Back.
and so, that's about an hour.
So he was not living in Newport News. He was living in Murfreesboro.
That's about an hour and a half commute for him every day to go to work. Wow. And we know that in the months leading up to his death, he had gone to Paul D. Camp Community College in Franklin and inquired about enrolling at the local community college. And so for somebody who is trying to, if you want to use the words, turn their life around, by all intents and purposes, Torrey was doing that, right? He had distanced himself, what we thought was distancing himself from those in Raleigh that were bad influences and bad situations, and he was relocated in Murfreesboro. And what we thought, and really what his grandparents thought, and his mother and his father were doing the right things.
But trouble kept finding Torrey Anderson.
It did.
He started hanging with the wrong people. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show. But what was it that led him from the grandparents wanting to do so much for him, and then he basically turning his back on his grandparents and slipping back into the same lifestyle?
Andy, I'm not sure that he turned his life, and I would really disagree with you on that. That he turned his back on his grandparents.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I do think.
Is that too hard?
It's very hard because I do think that he loved his grandparents. I think his grandparents worshipped the ground that young man walked on. But I think anybody in life, whether you're dealing with, we can relate this to somebody who has substance abuse issues, right? They want to separate themselves. They want to be clean and sober from the substance abuse issues, but there's always a pull. And it's the same thing with people who are involved in gang life or involved in criminal activity. They get incarcerated, things happen in their life, they want to change, but there's always a pull. There's always associates that want to bring you back to the level that they're at. Okay. That's what happened with Torrey.
Captain Tommy Potter, thank you for setting that up. Now, coming up in our next segment, we're going to start talking about the case difficulties. Captain Tommy Potter will talk about that coming up right after this. And welcome back, everyone. Speaking with Captain Tommy Potter from the Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office, speaking about the death of Torrey Anderson, February 12th, 2013. First question to you in this segment, Tommy. What help did the family provide to investigators to piece together what may have happened to him, who he may have been hanging with, all that?
So throughout this entire investigation, the Anderson family has been extremely cooperative with investigators. We made numerous trips in the days and weeks following the discovery of Torrey's body to North Carolina. They put us in contact with family members. They put us in contact with acquaintances that they knew. They gave us cell phone records. They gave us bank records. They put us in contact even with people in Raleigh in the Wake County area. So from an investigator standpoint, remember, the victim is at the center of the wheel, and we're trying to learn as much as we can about that victim. The family, associates, loved ones are extremely helpful, and the cooperation that we got from the Anderson family was invaluable.
Okay, we have some video that we're going to show you, and if you could, just talk, what are we looking at here?
So we're looking at Nike Park Road in the early morning hours.
Discovered during the darkness.
Yes, discovered during the darkness. This is a picture of Torrey. This is one of the last known pictures that we have of Torrey. That's the car that was bought by his grandparents to give him to Torrey to use. Drive back and forth. Here's our investigative team and deputies on the scene, and we're again trying to figure out exactly Are there any clues there? Trace evidence left there to recover? We're trying to wait for the medical examiner to get there. So there are a lot of things that happen in the first stages of those investigations. We're gauging how many investigators we're going to need, what resources from the sheriff's office we're going to need. The Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office is not a large agency, but we'll put all hands on deck anytime we have situations like this. We brought in the state police bomb squad that tells us what kind of accelerants
Did the
were
canines
used.
find anything?
So the canines did not alert on any accelerants in the car.
And why were they looking under the hood?
We want to look for a VIN number, and so where the amount of damage on this car, the places that we would normally look for the VIN were melted, and so there are VINs that are attached to the engine and other parts of the car, and so we're looking there for try to locate a VIN.
Okay, so you found the car, got burned. It looked like it was a professional thing. The people knew what they were doing, trying to burn up the evidence. Why is he outside the car?
That's something we've never really understood, and that's part of the investigation. So was Torrey shot somewhere else and brought and dumped here in Isle of Wight County? Was he alive when they pulled into that field and he was shot there and his assailants left, but maybe Torrey had not died at that point, and he was, even though he suffered several catastrophic gunshots, was he able to crawl out of the car and attempt to get away?
So, but we don't know.
We don't know that.
Is it possible he was shot inside the car
There's a
and
possibility.
he tried to get out?
And then we think that's a possibility why the car was set on fire, was that he was shot inside the car. So we have other people that would have been in there. There would have been DNA. There would have been hair fibers. There would have been fingerprints. There would have been a number of things that investigators would have looked to collect it as pieces of the puzzle.
And all that burned up.
All that evidentiary value was gone.
Now the car was was there.
Right.
Now, do we think another car followed that car? And was there any other tracks in the mud, in the land, that would show another car was there as well?
So there were no other tracks there in the field.
There was only one car in the
Only
field.
one car in the field. But we do know during the course of the investigation that we're pretty certain that another car followed them there to that location.
Because it's off the road. It's, I mean,
this is probably about
100 yards?
No, this is probably about 30 yards off the field. You turn into this field, and as soon as you turn in, you make a right, and the car was right there, very visible from the roadway. But we do know from the latter part of our investigation, and that's really how we ruled out our main suspect. So we developed a suspect in this case fairly early on in the case.
who was that? Name?
It's a young man by the last name Sadler. That's all I want to say is for the course of the investigation.
What was his connection?
He was an acquaintance of Torrey's. He was a former involved with some gang activity. He's from northeastern North Carolina. And we interviewed him several times. He was our main suspect.
How quickly did you find him after you found that body? Soon?
Probably within the first 72 hours, we had a connection that this may be, and it was because of some social media posts. And so one of the things, again, we started looking at was our victim. What posts were made concerning our victim on Facebook and other social media platforms? And we saw some Facebook posts that were made, and we started looking at that, and that led us to Mr. Sadler. And again, almost for the entirety of the investigation, he was our person of interest in this case.
At what point did he not become the guy that you are looking for? What happened?
So we finally began to have some people throughout this whole investigation, people were very reluctant to talk to law enforcement because of some of the gang ties and the gang affiliation. We had some people who began to talk to us that helped us to refine our timeline a little bit. Also, at some point in the investigation, because we knew that we had a connection between several locations in North Carolina. We had connections here in Virginia. We asked the FBI to come on board and to partner with us in this investigation, directly because of the gang ties. And so when the FBI came on board, they brought some different technology and some subject matter experts and some analysts that we don't have at the local level. And they were able to really dig into cell phone records, cell tower records, location data, and a number of other technology-related avenues that we can explore. And because of that, we were able to say, we don't think Sadler was involved in the shooting. Maybe these other people were.
Was it something specific? No calls to him, no calls back and forth?
It came down to establishing a more concrete timeline. It came down to that.
And the timeline And we will talk about this in our third segment coming up. Well, let's talk about that timeline, what all that information led to. But we're going to take care of that right after this. Welcome back, everyone. The death of Torrey Anderson. Captain's here with us. Thank you again for being here. I'd like to know what was going on, say, the first 3 days, the last 3 days before that burning car was found and Torrey was found dead on the ground.
Yeah. So
First 3 days, the last 3 days.
Any investigation, the timeline drives the investigation. So here's what we know. Friday morning, Torrey and his cousin left Murfreesboro, North Carolina to go to work at Smithfield Packing. Sometime during the day, Torrey told his cousin, I'm getting off work early and I'm going to Newport News. We know Torrey was spending more and more time in Newport News on the weekends or in his off time. So on Friday night, we know that Torrey met up with his cousin again at a club there in Newport News. We also know that sometime either late Friday night or maybe even Saturday night, Torrey was in a house, in an apartment down off 29th Street in Newport News. We were able to recover a couple of cell phone pictures that was taken by someone who was in the house that puts Torrey and several other people in this apartment. Ironically, the apartment was supposed to be vacant, so we don't know why Torrey was there. So we know that he was with several individuals Friday night, probably on Saturday. What happened on Sunday is still a mystery. We don't know a lot about that. We do know Torrey did call his grandfather and say, I won't be home for the weekend. But then on Sunday morning, early Monday morning, 3:49 and Monday morning, Torrey's body is discovered. So we do know where his movements somewhere in the Newport News area the days prior to his death.
Now, you also said in the last segment that the FBI is brought in, eventually brought in. Okay.
Yep.
What can you tell me and us about the suspect you now have? I know you're not going to give us the name, but tell us about the suspect and how he figures in to everything that happened those last 3 days.
So we think that the individual that we have as a person of interest, a suspect now, was one of the people with Torrey during the 3 days that we know his whereabouts.
Pictures of him in that apartment? Or that house?
We think he's in one of the pictures. We're pretty sure of it, right? We also know that he also has some gang affiliation in Newport News. We know that he is very familiar to the Newport News Police Department. We've had worked very closely with them. Our investigators have tried to interview him, and he will not cooperate with our investigation. But we do know, based on, again, with the partnership and the value that they brought to this investigation, we were able to really dig deep into cell phone records and to begin to map the movement of cell phone data from Newport News into Isle of Wight County. And so we were able to look at a timeline between basically 2 o'clock in the morning and the time the body was discovered. And we're like, what vehicles, what cell phones are coming in and out of Isle of Wight County? And based on that, we have narrowed down the person that we are pretty sure was in or near that field on Nike Park Road at the time Torrey Anderson was killed.
You have reached out to this person.
I have.
Has he refused to come in for an interview?
He will not cooperate.
Are you
with the
forced to bring him in?
We are not forced to bring him in. At this stage in the game, we don't have enough.
Has he lawyered up?
Yes. But at this stage in the game,
Are you in contact with a lawyer?
Not at this point in the investigation. The person that we have as the suspect now is currently incarcerated. So we know where he's at. We know he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And so as the future clues develop, one of the main reasons I'm here today, right, and talking about this case is so that we can, I don't believe that any case should ever go cold. When you talk about a cold case, people think it's frozen, right? It doesn't move, right? Is this case inactive? Is it dormant right now? It is. But this case does not sit in a box in a vault somewhere. This case sits on the bookshelf in our investigator's office. So the reason for doing this, to bring up this since 2013, is to prod somebody to come forward with that one last piece that we need, that we can have the probable cause. And the other thing, Andy, and it's very important before we finish this, is I made a commitment. I sat in the living room of Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, the grandparents, and his parents, and I sat in their living room and I said, it's my promise to you that we will never forget about Torrey. We can't forget about his past. We can't forget about other things that he was involved with, but I'll never forget about the person that was Torrey Anderson.
Now, a lot of people are going to be watching this.
Yep.
What should they do if they know something about
So
this?
some-
And you can always remain anonymous. Is there a reward?
There is a reward.
Tell me about that.
There is a reward. The crime line, Isle of Wight, Smithfield, Windsor crime line will offer a reward up to $1,500, if not more. I can tell you at one point, the Anderson family put up a $20,000 reward for information, and I'm not sure if that still stands, but the local crime line will pay enhanced rewards for information leading to information that leads to the arrest of someone involved in this case.
And that is 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP.
Lock you up, or they also can reach out to us on the P3.com tips
tips.com.
app and just search for Isle of Wight County, and you can submit on P3 tips. You can submit photographs, you can submit pictures, you can carry on two-way dialogue with investigators, all while remaining 100% confidential and anonymous.
1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP and P3tips.com. Right?
That's it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you think this case will be solved, yes or no?
Yes.
What will it take?
Someone coming forward.
That guy coming in?
Someone coming forward and giving us information, whether he comes forward or not. There's somebody out there that knows the last, like I said, we know the last 72 hours. There's someone that knows the last 3 hours before Torrey's death. That's what we need to know.
1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP, P3tips.com. Is there a reason to believe that there might be other suspects out there also? But you've got this guy, and he's incarcerated. You
He is
won't tell us
currently.
where,
I will not,
probably.
no.
But the people who have incarcerated know that he is a suspect in this case?
They do. They do. There are multiple agencies that know that he is a suspect. And are there other people tied to this? There are other people tied to this. I think that we're probably looking at a lone shooter, but we're also looking at others that were in that car.
How
And
does gang affiliation complicate the investigation?
people don't want to cooperate? People are scared to talk. And also that it complicated the investigation is the large geographical area that we've got Torrey with ties to North Carolina. People in North Carolina who travel to the Hampton Roads Peninsula area all the time, and then the distance between Newport News and Isle of Wight. So we're looking at time, distance, and space in this investigation.
Well, listen, I know they got the right guy here in the right sheriff's office and the right investigators.
We have the right investigative team. We're very proud of the work that our investigators do. Isle of Wight County is a great place to live and work. And of all the homicides that we have, and thank God we don't have many, but we solve them. We have 2 unsolved homicides in our county right now. That's Torrey Anderson or from the sheriff's office, Torrey Anderson and Carrie Singer. So our investigators work. They're rock stars. They work very hard to solve these cases.
Carrie Singer, we are going to discuss next week.
Yes, sir.
You'll be back next
will.
week with another edition of Inside the Investigation. Is there any other last piece of evidence you can tell us about before we leave?
Cell phone records were the key to this case, but I'm still looking for the last piece of major evidence, and that's somebody coming forward willing to talk.
And that, once again, 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP, 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP, P3tips.com. Captain, thank you very much for coming in. Tommy Potter, and you will be back. He will be back next week talking about the Carrie Singer case. That, too, an unsolved case, a cold case. And we'll find out more about cold cases coming up next week. That's the last word here on Inside the Investigation. I'm Andy Fox. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.